This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Escalating tensions in Libya spark sharp divisions among international powers. Military council leaders in Sudan meet foreign delegations amid an ultimatum from the AU to transfer power to a civilian authority. And we update you on the extensive damage to the Notre-Dame Cathedral in France following a fire and efforts to restore the iconic structure. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi, and with me is Raman Young with a preview of your business news.
Certainly, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in business. Nigeria's national power grid collapses yet again, putting parts of the country into a blackout. And the Nairobi Securities Exchange has set up a plan in order to boost listings for Kenyan SMEs. We'll be looking at that and plenty more in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Lindy.
Thanks so much, Rama. In our top story, the Deputy Prime Minister of Libya's UN-backed government is accusing Khalifa Haftar of attempting to stage a coup. The Eastern Libyan commander's troops have been advancing towards the Libyan capital. According to the World Health Organization, 174 people have been killed so far and at least 756 others wounded in and around Tripoli. Haftar has justified his offensive, stating it's an attempt to bring stability to the country. The Tripoli-based government has been able to keep Haftar's troops from advancing beyond the city's southern suburbs.
There is a troop invasion of Tripoli from Haftar and his military. They were starting to attack the capital of Libya, Tripoli, and the government of National Accord, the legitimate government of Libya. This has happened around 13 days ago. Today, the position of the government is very clear. This is a coup, and he have to go back with his troop to where he was before this all happening.
Ministers of Libya's United Nations-backed Government of National Accord have called for an end to fighting in the country's capital of Tripoli.
We see that at the very least, the aggressor must retreat, giving a chance for ceasefire and political resolution. That is the goal we've set forth. We are in communication with all our friends and all countries against this pursuit to enlighten their position.
Some external powers, including the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, France and the United States, have shown support for Khalifa Haftar. Just recently, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met with Haftar, who has defied international calls to halt his battle against fighters loyal to the Government of National Accord based in Tripoli.
Schools have been bombed with heavy artillery. Recently, a book storage unit has also been bombed, a storage unit containing books necessary for the next academic year. This not only obstructs this academic year, but the next academic year as well. These are all crimes in breach of international law and are even elevated to the level of war crimes.
Fighting between the government and rival forces has lasted almost 2 weeks after the Libyan National Army began its advance towards the capital. Both administrations have been mobilizing their allies in a battle for control of Tripoli. The country's UN-backed government has said that some terrorist groups that are taking advantage of the chaos have been apprehended.
Forces from the Ministry of Interior have in the past 2 days arrested 2 terrorist units from ISIS. The ministry was able to track them and arrest them. The Ministry of Interior, like all other security branches, has both a known and unknown security plan to track any extremist or terrorist sneaking into the capital.
More than 18,000 people are said to have been displaced while fleeing the violence, according to the UN's migration agency. There are fears that the unrest in Libya can lead to new migration flows towards Europe. The UN says at least 150 people have been killed as a result of the fighting. However, the Civilian Medical and Support Centre puts the number at 67 dead, with over 450 others injured.
Statistics this far regarding the wounded is 475, many of them civilians as well as children, as a result of random strikes on civilian districts. Regarding deaths, there are 67 dead. 24 of these are civilian deaths, including 2 women and 3 children.
A national reconciliation conference supported by the UN, set to be held in mid-April, was postponed amid renewed fighting. The flare-up threatens to disrupt oil supplies and worsen Libya's suffering, which has been in turmoil since 2011 after the ousting of Gaddafi.
Our correspondent Guy Henderson is in Libya, where Haftar's Egypt-backed forces are based in the east of the country. He's part of the first international news team to enter the area since this latest round of fighting began. He now reports from Benghazi, a city that itself has been devastated by years of conflict.
From the time when General Haftar's self-styled Libyan National Army fought viciously with various militias, including Islamist militias, and caused a lot of very heavy damage to the centre of downtown here. You'll see here, this sign explains that people should still not move into these buildings, despite the fact that it is now some time since the fighting ended, because there are still improvised explosives in a lot of these buildings. They are not, they have not been cleared yet. And you can see the level of destruction as we move the camera around. We met just a small number of people who have started to move back to this area and try and rebuild their lives. We met a former policeman down one of the side streets here who said he'd moved back to his home here despite the fact that it had no walls and it was seriously damaged because he was having to pay rent in the other place and he was struggling to afford it. He said his neighbour joined Islamic State at the height of the fighting and kidnapped his brother despite the fact that they'd known each other for 20 years. Those are the kind of stories that you hear from people here. And importantly, one of the other things he said was that, and this is a gripe, an age-old gripe that has often been expressed from the East, even, pre-2011 revolution, is, he was wondering why the Tripoli government had not sent funds to, carry out reconstruction.
Well, let's bring you more now on the growing tensions in Libya. Guy Henderson joins us live from the city of Benghazi. Guy, of course, a lot of our focus has been on the escalating tensions in Tripoli. But tell us what the situation is like in Benghazi. Just seeing your report, it seems very quiet there still. But give us an idea of whether or not people feel as though the country is on the edge of an all-out war.
Yeah, I mean, the polar opposite of Tripoli in many ways, an escalating conflict there. And whatever your view on General Khalifa Haftar, there's little doubt that he has brought a lot of stability back to the city of Benghazi and indeed quite a long way beyond Benghazi. What he has not been able to fully address, though, despite bringing back that stability, and as I'd mentioned in that walk and talk a little earlier in the downtown area of Benghazi, is reconstruction, specifically gaining enough funds for reconstruction. One of the strange ironies of this civil war is that, of the fact that there are essentially 2 rival governments in Libya, is that yes, most of the oil reserves and resources may be within what is now Haftar-controlled areas, but at the moment he is still sending that oil back to Tripoli, and Tripoli is then distributing some of those funds back to the east to pay things like public sector salaries. And what I believe we will hear quite shortly from the Eastern Prime Minister, who we will be interviewing inside this building just after this live, is calls for Tripoli to send more of those funds back to the east in order that it can carry out the construction that it says it's not yet able to undergo.
And of course, Guy Haftar has reiterated that his push towards Tripoli is all about restoring stability to the country. Does this view have support in Benghazi, or is it kind of more leaning towards what the UN envoy is suggesting, that this is really more like a coup?
I think that there is quite a broad level of support within Benghazi for the stability that Haftar has brought back. We spoke to one lady in that downtown area, that devastated downtown area earlier as well, and what she'd said is that she compared the militias now existing in Tripoli to a cancer that she said could have been treated earlier but wasn't, and that is why we now find ourselves in the situation that we're now in, which is General Haftar advancing west and trying to take out those militias.
And of course, I mean, the international community is paying a lot of attention to developments here, but what options remain for the international community, considering many have argued that military intervention would not be a good idea?
I mean, I think it very much depends who you ask. If you ask those countries that continue to show support for General Haftar's offensive, they might say, well, the best way to bring an end to this instability is to stop the condemnations and to show some backing and allow him to get on with the job. Critics would say that perhaps the only thing they can do at this stage is continue their condemnations. We've heard from the Italian government, for example, saying that military intervention on the other side to give more support to the West wouldn't solve anything, and that too would potentially escalate the conflict. So condemnation coming from countries like Italy, coming from the UN envoy, as you've heard, but perhaps not much else they can do except for condemn the Haftar's actions.
Well, thank you so much, Guy Henderson, joining us there live from Benghazi. Now, Sudan's new Transitional Military Council has been receiving foreign delegates. A video broadcast on Sudanese state television on Tuesday shows council leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan meeting a Chinese delegation member. His deputy Mohammed Hamdan Daglo was meeting British Ambassador Irfan Sadiq and Dutch Ambassador Karen Boven. Following the ousting of former President Omar al-Bashir, the council announced that it will run Sudan for a transitional period of 2 years before holding elections. The 10-member council is comprised mainly of senior commanders representing the military, the police, a paramilitary force and intelligence services. It is currently negotiating with civilian protesters on a transitional cabinet. Well, the African Union has given Sudan's Transitional Military Council a 15-day ultimatum to transfer power to a civilian authority or risk suspension from the continental bloc. The AU says a military-led transition would be contrary to the aspirations of the people of Sudan. Members of the Military Council are believed to be in the process of choosing a prime minister for a civilian government.
Protesters in Sudan continue to make their demands. Their message:
one of the main demands of the protest movement, which is the formation of a sovereign civilian council with military representation to protect the revolution and to guarantee the demands are met. Our second demand is the creation of a civilian government made up of cadres and its task to be agreed upon with full executive powers.
Don't like amnesty here. We need a republic. Yeah, we need Republican government. Until now we are not going our house. We are stay here until we need to change our all needs.
Members of the Transitional Military Council in Sudan have since given the protesters' leaders the opportunity to name a prime minister. The council is currently in Addis Ababa for Security Council meeting at the AU headquarters.
I would like to say that we are already in the process of choosing a prime minister to form a civilian government. So we are initiating this even before having a session with the African Union. This is our conviction, and this is the way forward for peace. So we also have to respect it. We are committed to the decision of peace in the Security Council.
Analysts say a coalition between the military council and the opposition is the safest and best option for all. But protesters are not ready to compromise. Chamgono, CGTN.
In Algeria, the chairman of the country's constitutional council, Taib Belaiz, has quit his post. This follows persistent calls for his resignation by pro-democracy protesters who claim he's part of the ruling elite they want abolished. Belaiz submitted his resignation to interim president Abdelkader Ben Salah as demonstrations continued into the 8th week. Meanwhile, the army chief has said the military was considering all options to resolve the country's political crisis and warned that time is running out. Former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika stepped down from the presidency on April 2nd, but his departure has failed to placate many Algerians who want a complete overhaul of the old guard. Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, we update you on the extensive damage to the Notre-Dame Cathedral in France and efforts to restore it. And for the love of the environment, activists take to the streets of London.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now for the latest on the Notre-Dame fire. French officials are currently considering it an accident. Although they have ruled out arson, the exact cause of the blaze is still unknown. Experts are assessing the structural integrity of the cathedral while firefighters continue to rescue valuable artwork inside. CGTN's Laura Walubengo reports.
It took 14 hours for firefighters to extinguish the blaze that engulfed the Cathedral of Notre-Dame in the early hours of Monday evening. With the situation under control, officials in Paris are now turning their attention to the structural integrity of the nearly 900-year-old building.
Currently, there is surveillance on site to make sure that there is no rekindling, but the fire has been extinguished. Right now, the main concern of the emergency services and of the Paris Police Prefecture, who are coordinating operations, is the building's security to ensure the structure will not have any faults.
About 500 firefighters were dispatched to contain the blaze at the center of Paris. A number of firefighters have been tasked with securing the cathedral's valuable artwork.
The most precious items, notably the crown of thorns and the tunic of St. Louis, which are safe at the Hotel de Ville. The remainder of the artworks will be placed at the Louvre today or tomorrow as quickly as possible.
The condition of many pieces, some dating back to the 17th century, as well as the cathedral's structure, remains unknown.
I think now the moment is at the for the French authorities to make an assessment of the situation, and then based on that, of course, the United Nations will stand ready to help as much as we are asked for, but there has been already a spontaneous offer of support, especially in terms of expertise by UNESCO.
France's wealthy families have been quick to offer assistance. The owners of LVMH, the luxury goods conglomerate, plans to donate over $220 million. So far, more than $600 million has been pledged towards the restoration of the landmark building in the French capital. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
Now, in the UK, climate change protesters have been blocking major roads in central London. Their main objective is to get the government to significantly reduce carbon emissions. Here's more on that story.
Members of Extinction Rebellion, a group of climate change activists, have been leading protests in central London. 113 people have been arrested so far for blocking some of London's most famous roads, including the Waterloo Bridge. Ben Moss glued his hand to a lorry truck overnight.
We glued ourselves to this so that this vehicle could not be moved by the police last night. The reason why we're doing that is that we want to secure this bridge as part of the actions for Extinction Rebellion. We're doing this because we want the government to take action about the climate crisis, about the ecological collapse that we're facing.
55 bus routes have been diverted due to the protest. According to the police, this has disrupted 500,000 people. For protesters, the disruptions are a necessary step to spur larger government action.
It's really important to me because there's a very legitimate climate and ecological emergency, and I want to have babies one day, and I'm not going to be able to if the Earth is dead.
The protesters aim to get the UK government to reduce carbon emissions to net zero by 2025. Meanwhile, the government has said it shares their passion to combat climate change. Astatal, CGTN.
And to the Democratic Republic of Congo now, the United Nations mission in the country, known as MONUSCO, has partnered with the government and aid agencies to encourage dialogue among ethnic groups that have been fighting over land in the eastern part of the country. The program seeks to address the root causes of land-based conflict, which has left thousands of people dead in North Kivu province. CGTN's Chris Ochamuringa has more from eastern DRC.
62-year-old Barihuta Muhire was born in Chasamba village in eastern DRC. Local authorities recently ordered him to vacate his home after selling his land to a wealthy individual. Barihuta is now struggling to start a new life in the town of Kichanga.
I fled my home and lost my possessions. The clothes on my back are all I have. I keep wandering, trying to find work.
Like Barihuta, many locals here rely heavily on the land for their livelihoods. Large concessions are owned by few landowners under traditional informal land tenure systems. And that has triggered conflict among the Hunde, Hutu and Tutsi ethnic groups. This part of North Kivu province is reported to have more than 20 armed groups operating here. Some of them are tribal militias that were formed to protect community members from attacks by rival groups. Over the past 2 decades, conflicts over land, minerals and ethnicity have killed millions of people in eastern DRC. The arrival of Rwandan migrants who fled ethnic conflicts back home further increased tensions. The civilian section of the UN peacekeeping mission in the DRC and the Congolese government have come up with a program aimed at fostering peace.
We try to align the interests of communities who are maybe fighting with each other. We try to align the interests of people who profit off of chaos and those who actually, are trying to make peace. And so the more that we do that, the more that we actually have a way to move forward together and that we actually have something solid.
The program also provides income-generating activities to prevent young people from taking up arms to resolve disputes. Emmanuel Kalonji is one of the beneficiaries. He was given the startup capital and trained to become a barber after a market study found it a viable business.
This project has really helped me. I used to be a wreck. I couldn't buy myself a pair of trousers or oil because I had no income.
The program was conceived as the UN peacekeeping force's eventual exit strategy from the DRC. While it's being hailed as a potential peace-building mechanism, some internally displaced people like Barihuta Muhire believe it won't be enough on its own. He hopes the DRC government will act more strongly to restore land justice in his area. Chris Sochamringa, CGTN, Kichanga, Democratic Republic of Congo.
And to South Sudan now, where many of the country's citizens have limited access to quality healthcare. The impact of long-running internal conflict has left tens of thousands with debilitating injuries. In fact, many have had their limbs amputated for no other reason than lack of treatment. The International Committee of the Red Cross is now renewing the hopes of those who've lost limbs by offering prosthetics.
The impact of the conflict in South Sudan has been heavy, and the effects will echo for years to come. The International Committee of the Red Cross has been supporting the government's efforts to re-establish crucial sectors, and health is at the forefront. Approximately 60% of the patients seek the services of the ICRC in Juba. 1 in 3 has gunshot-related injuries and disabilities, often leading to amputation. Others lose limbs as a result of injuries that could have been managed if there was quick medical response.
As I was going out of my house on a rainy day to go to the field, I got bitten by a snake. I was taken home. There was no car to transport me to the hospital.
The prosthesis constructed at the ICRC center made within a day of a patient being measured and a cast taken, a crucial support for those in need.
It helps me go to school.
Our role is to have the prosthesis provided and tell that this is part and parcel of you, it's going to be part of you, it's going to let you walk and get you back to do your business as usual.
Last year alone, the center made 580 prosthetic limbs, with the cost of all treatment borne by the ICRC. Due to the infrastructural challenges, the ICRC relies on a fleet of planes and helicopters to bring patients to hospitals and physical rehabilitation centers. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
To Uganda now, and the country has introduced a digital court system at its maximum correctional institution. The system, which is the first of its kind in East Africa, will help ease access to justice. According to the country's judiciary, there are over 155,000 pending cases in the court system. And to reduce delays in prosecution, inmates will now be able to make a plea at the prison facility before going to trial. CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga reports.
So now I've muted his audio.
Linked through video conferencing, this technology is allowing inmates to interact with judges miles apart, and the prison authorities are upbeat about the new system.
Some of the people I have here are very, very aggressive and very belligerent. I recall a situation where one of the suspects actually grabbed, I think, a judge. Had it not been for first intervention of security, it wouldn't have been a very good outcome. Therefore, such a people, this is the best place where they can address court from, without necessarily being a danger.
Uganda is currently holding over 57,000 people in its jail system. Prison authorities here say virtual courts like this one will help cut down on transport costs and also improve access to justice for inmates. The country spends about $454,000 on fuel to transport suspects to court. They now believe this new system will save this money.
I'm looking forward to very big savings in this direction so that we can attend to other issues of importance in prisons.
Meanwhile, the judiciary believes the system will reduce the case backlog in its system.
Inmates can get on with their cases faster and pursue parole, probation, or other solutions for their future in a timelier manner.
Some critics argue that the cost of delivering justice may go up because internet costs in Uganda are still high. But as they roll out the service to other courts, it's hoped that more people will get justice in real time. Hilary Isga, CGTN, Kampala.
Recapping your top stories this hour. The Deputy Prime Minister of Libya's UN-backed government is accusing Khalifa Haftar of attempting to stage a coup. The Eastern Libyan commander's troops have been advancing towards the Libyan capital, and according to the World Health Organization, 174 people have been killed so far and 756 others wounded. Haftar has justified the offensive, stating it's an attempt to bring stability to the country. Sudan's Transitional Military Council has been receiving foreign delegates. A video broadcast on Sudanese state television on Tuesday shows council leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan meeting a Chinese delegation member. His deputy, Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, was meeting the British and Dutch ambassadors. The African Union has given the Military Council a 15-day ultimatum to transfer power to a civilian authority or risk suspension from the continental bloc. In Algeria, the chairman of the country's Constitutional Council, Taïb Belaiz, has quit his post as demonstrations continued into the 8th week. This follows persistent calls for his resignation by pro-democracy protesters who claim he's part of the ruling elite they want abolished. Meanwhile, the army chief has said the military was considering all options to resolve the country's political crisis and warned that time is running out. And French officials are considering the Notre-Dame fire an accident. Although they have ruled out arson, the exact cause of the blaze is still unknown. Experts are assessing the structural integrity of the cathedral, while firefighters continue to rescue valuable artwork inside. France's wealthy families have been quick to offer assistance. So far, more than $600 million has been pledged towards the restoration of the landmark building in the French capital. And those are your top stories this hour. And let's now go to Rama for your business news.
Thank you very much, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in business. Nigeria's national grid collapses yet again, sending various parts of the country into a blackout. And the Nairobi Stock Exchange is setting up an initiative to boost listings by Kenyan SMEs. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Right, then let's start in Nigeria, where the Echo Electricity Distribution Company has confirmed the total system collapse of the transmission company of Nigeria's national grid. Now, authorities say efforts to repair the grid and restore supply are ongoing. This grid collapse, though, is the fourth this year alone. Back in January, the nation's grid collapsed twice, worsening power supply in various parts of the country. According to the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, a total system collapse means a total blackout nationwide for several hours. A partial collapse, on the other hand, is a failure of just a part of the national grid. And we're still in Nigeria. An online house cleaning service aims to create millions of jobs in Africa's most populous nation. Kurin, as it's known, is a platform that acts as a matchmaker between house cleaners on one hand and homeowners on the other. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam explains how it's worked out so far.
25-year-old Solomon Sunday gets ready for work. His tools, a scraper, some rags and bottles of cleaning detergent. Solomon is among a growing number of Nigerians who've signed up to Kurin, an online house cleaning service where cleaners meet those in need of cleaning services. Hundreds who can't find regular jobs make a living by signing up with the service. Even those with regular jobs have joined the platform to make extra cash. Before becoming a cleaner, Solomon struggled to eke a living. He earned only $50 monthly from his previous job, barely enough to pay house rent. He says he could triple that from cleaning houses.
I was homeless, but courtesy of Korean, I've been able to get a place of my own. I've been able to fix my bills. As in, it has been great, it has been satisfying.
The service is currently available in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, in Lagos, the commercial capital, and Port Harcourt in the southeast. Its developers are targeting 15 million clients in those 3 states. But they have to build confidence in a market where most people are skeptical about letting a stranger in their home. Even though the Korean founders say cleaners are enrolled after rigorous background checks, they now offer insurance to cover damages and losses for clients.
In Abuja only, we've served over 350 jobs so far and over 75 repeated customers, and 25 Koreans who have come on the platform. So yeah, it's huge. We look forward to more states.
Rakia has depended on Korean to clean her house in the past months. She says she has built confidence over time.
As in what you have asked them to do, and they do it without tampering with other places that does not concern them.
Nigeria's unemployment rate hit 23.1% in 2018 from 18.8% in the previous year, rising from 111.1 million in 2017 to 115.5 million in the end of 2018. And simple innovations like Kuren are increasingly becoming avenues for millions. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Now, the Lily Mines saga in Mpumalanga province in South Africa still continues. On the 5th of February 2016, the mine entrance collapsed, sucking in a shipping container with 3 people inside at the time. Yvonne Nisi, Piting Kambule and Solomon Nyurendo, they were all working in the lamp office at the time, but they were never found. Sekula Sonke Corporation, the prospective buyer of Lily Mine and Barbrook Mine, the 2 mines in the Vantage goldfields in the South African stable, were in Johannesburg recently. Angela Coppola has an update.
The mine owners have tried unsuccessfully to find funding to recover the shipping container and reopen the mine. And then in 2018, a new consortium made an offer, which was signed off by the current owners, Vantage Goldfields. But SSC says there was a sticking point.
We had no control of the money we put in the business, and I mean, it would be reckless of us from an SSC point. We're putting a substantial amount of money every month, and we don't have control over that after we've agreed that we will be part of deciding how the money will be spent. And then also the money that's been paid, that's given to the BRP on a monthly basis. So those were the concerns that we've raised to the parties, and instead of let's sit and resolve the matter, we then started to having where we find ourselves.
There's a court case about to commence between the 2 parties, and the community, miners and the families of the 3 missing miners have moved from a sense of relief to one of anxiety.
It is really painful because if those kids or the trio who are trapped underground, one of them was maybe the daughter or son of maybe our former president or Minister of Mineral Resources, I'm quite sure we wouldn't been here at this point of time. They could have helped in 2016, but because they are the kids of the poorest of the poor.
There's also frustration from the buyer's side.
There is absolutely no reason why this thing has been delayed. I mean, in fact, this morning there was a telecon again with the DMR that is trying their level best to intervene and find an amicable situation, given the pressures of the community, and this mine has been in Styrol for 3 years. There's a lot of illegal activities, zamas and all that, and we're frustrated because we're actually ready to start, but we can't do anything if you don't have title.
The community nearby consists of some of the 900 miners who are still unemployed, waiting for the new owners to step in and start operations.
The situation on the ground, it's getting worse day by day. Looking at the fact that the crime level, everyone now, they don't know how to survive actually. So hence they end up just trying to make ends meet through criminal activities, which is illegal mining and stuff like that, which is not even safe for the community. So would want anybody to come to our rescue.
Vantage Goldfields CEO Mike McChesney says that SSC is not blameless, claiming that SSC's answer has not made good on all his promises, so they cancelled the agreement.
While the buyers and sellers fight about shareholding and money, the community and the ex-miners are all suffering. It's been 3 years now. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Kenya's Nairobi Securities Exchange has set up an incubation program to prepare companies for listing and bond issuance on the exchange. The platform seeks to unlock the potential of Kenyan SMEs, which provide the bulk of employment in the East African economy. Here's CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwana with this report on the program, which is called Ibuka, that's Swahili for Emerge.
The Ibuka initiative targets companies in different sectors such as entertainment and financial technology. The NSC, in partnership with other organizations, aims to offer training to enable growth, help entrepreneurs access resources and enhance their visibility.
As opposed to waiting for companies to come to the market when they're ready, we want to make them ready. So the 3 stages of Ibuka is 1, we want to get them ready, which is the incubator. We then prepare them and get them fit, which is the accelerator, and then we take them to the 3rd stage, which is where we want them to get value, which is now when they're able to access different products in the market.
Since its launch in 2018, 6 firms have been admitted to the Ibuka program. These include APT Commodities, Blue Nile Rolling Mills and Globetrotter Agency.
So Ibuka makes sense because of course we want to grow, whether it's capital injection or market growth, which is what everybody looks for, and especially when it's global growth. I want to do the recognition, I want to be recognized equally as well. So I guess that's the reason why we joined the platform, to make sure that we're able to grow.
The Nairobi Bourse handles average trading volumes of $8 to $10 million US. However, trading is dominated by big companies such as Telkom's firm Safaricom.
You find companies in things like entertainment, companies in things like fintech. Okay, it's a platform that does not have any very restrictive entry requirements. Okay, because we don't even look for your financials. All we want to know is you're keeping financials.
The NSC has diversified into government bonds such as the mobile phone-based M-Akiba program. It was launched in 2017 in efforts to enhance financial inclusion for economic development. The first quarter in 2017 had only 25% subscription. However, the second got a 79% subscription, raising $1.98 million US earlier this year. Wilkista Nyabwana, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
In a matter of hours, Indonesia goes to the polls to elect its next president. Economic growth in the Southeast Asian country has slowed down quite a bit in the last year, but experts argue it's expanding still at an appropriate pace. CGTN's Silkina Aluwalia now explains how the country's economic performance is playing into this election.
Elections are often seen as one of the major influences that affects a country's economy. Indonesia is no different. Businesses here are usually extra cautious during this time. Investors tend to take a step back to wait and see economic conditions after the voting day. Although the country's economy has seen a slower growth compared to previous years, economists are saying it's nothing to worry about.
We need to show that our economy is strong at a global front, so investors will not panic. We already have a strong fundamental economy. Our growth is small but still of quality because we are able to tackle social issues such as unemployment, poverty, and economic inequality. Those are very important points.
Since President Widodo took office in 2014, he has successfully constructed many infrastructure projects within big cities and villages on the outskirts of the country. His administration has been praised for his vision to ease connectivity between islands, provinces, and cities by developing seaports and airports across Indonesia.
This is the second time President Joko Widodo and Prabowo Subianto are going head-to-head. The two have always had competing values when it comes to key economic issues involving infrastructure, energy, natural resources, and environment.
Both candidates also have opposing views when it comes to food security, an important topic in Indonesia. Prabowo is looking to stop food imports such as rice and sugar, whereas Widodo believes in strengthening the country's import and export industry, at the same time maintaining solid relationships with the international community.
If we take a look at the recent debate that focused on international issues, both the candidates agreed to focus more on infrastructure projects within the country and to make sure that our national resources are not being exploited by other countries. But again, both understand that international relations are important to the growth of Indonesia's economy. I personally believe that anyone who wins, it will not drastically change Indonesia's relationship with the international community.
Experts believe while building a strong physical economy is crucial for Indonesia's future, in the next 5 years, the country's leader should also begin the development of human resources by increasing vocational education and developing the country's digital industries. Sulkina Aluwalia, CGTN, Jakarta.
Right then, I'll leave it there for the time being. Here's what's coming up at the top of the hour, though. So Egyptian MPs voted today on a package of proposed constitutional amendments. They actually approved them. What are they, and what do they mean for the future governance of the North African economy? We'll have some answers for you live from Cairo at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Lindy.
Thanks, Rama. Well, let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on Africa Live. Coming up, Nigeria releases a virtual reality film that documents the ordeal of abducted Chibok girls.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
A Nigerian filmmaker has made a virtual reality documentary film on the life of a woman whose daughter was one of hundreds of schoolgirls kidnapped by Boko Haram from the Nigerian town of Chibok. CGTN's Chibok has more.
Hundreds of viewers watched the Daughters of Chibok film at a popular bus stop in the commercial capital Lagos. The 11-minute documentary brings out the daily struggles of a mother whose 18-year-old daughter was abducted in 2014 by Boko Haram.
The Chibok story is a very important story. It's a global story, and it's a story that doesn't have closure yet. It doesn't have an ending yet. You know, there's still 112 girls missing. So from a story perspective, I mean, I found that interesting. I wanted to explore it.
What did I do? Who did I offend?
The documentary, which was shot in February, took 2 weeks to make on a budget of around $11,000. Joel, who started experimenting with virtual reality last year, said he wanted viewers to become enveloped in the world of the subject. Some spectators couldn't hold back their emotions.
I'm living the pain of those women. As a mother, I feel their pain. I know exactly what it is to go through this kind of thing. So it's not a good experience, although I enjoyed watching it, but it's not an experience that anybody wants to go through.
It's been 5 years since over 200 schoolgirls were kidnapped by Boko Haram. There are still around 100 Chibok girls unaccounted for. Boko Haram has killed more than 20,000 people and forced around 2 million to flee since it began an emergency in northeast Nigeria a decade ago. Chombono, CGTN.
In Saudi Arabia, adopting pets is becoming easier thanks to an initiative led by a local charity. Let's take a look.
Soye Al-Shalo is a Palestinian living in Riyadh. Together with a number of volunteers, she has managed to save nearly 80 stray cats and 30 dogs in the past 5 years.
We are the SOS Group, a message of compassion and mercy for animals. And we are dedicated to cats and dogs because they live with us. One of the goals we seek to achieve is to call for the principle of compassion and mercy so that we can help the cats. We have launched initiatives such as I need food and drink just like you, to emphasize that these animals are just like us and they have feelings like us.
Shalom says she is keen on supporting a culture of volunteerism and protection of stray animals in Saudi Arabia through a number of initiatives and activities. Among those is a 3-day event held at Oasis Pet Clinic where cats were offered for adoption. According to event organizers, nearly 16 animals found new homes through the forum.
I received a message on WhatsApp about an initiative offering cats for adoption. We came here and we saw many beautiful cats, and I asked the kids to choose a cat and hopefully it will be a new member in our family.
It was my dream to adopt a cat, and thank God that my mom adopted one. Now I'm very happy. When I return home, I will play with her and take care of her.
Volunteers at the initiative, however, struggle with limited resources. They say veterinary treatment, pet food and shelter is very expensive. New changes to the Saudi labor laws have pushed many foreigners out of the country. Many of them have subsequently abandoned their pets or released them to the streets. Shalom hopes that people will come forward and adopt such animals and give them a new home. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And coming up in your sports news, up next. Zimbabwe beats the UAE in an ODI cricket series in Harare.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Zimbabwe has wrapped up a 4-match ODI series against the United